Hello again, this is the Crusader Historian coming to you with another video, and today I am going to be talking about a topic that is close to my heart, and it's about the pillars of civilization. I learned this. You are going to get a variation of a lesson I learned when I was going to middle school. It was a long time ago. This is the school where I went to. It's called James F. Doughty School. I had a teacher in ancient history. She was a great teacher, and because of her, I found my passion and my love for history. I learned it could be fun. I learned history could be fun. I learned history could be exciting and meant for someone like me instead of some dusty old person sitting isolated. So, what are the pillars of civilization based on? Well, I introduce you to a phrase, S-P-I-R-E, or spire. These are the 5 pillars of civilization we are going to talk about. What do they mean, you ask? Well, they mean society, politics, intellectual achievements, religion, and economics. All these 5 pillars are key to understanding a civilization and what bring up a civilization. And we are going to be going over this together. The first pillar we are going to look at is society. Now, what is a society? In basic, this is how a community is organized and how it interacts. There are various different ways on how this society is ordered. But it generally has an upper class, a middle class, and a lower class. We have 3 different options. On the left is how the feudal system works. In the center, it's how Egyptians work. And on the right is a variation of our current society on how it is organized. In the feudal system, there are peasants on the bottom. They have their own things on what to do. They have knights on the top. They have various obligations to do. I have a few videos on the feudal system, so feel free to go check it out, please. Then above the knights are the nobles, and above the nobles are the king. In ancient Egypt, it is something similar but different. There is a pharaoh or a monarch at the top, but underneath the pharaoh is the vizier, like the chancellor, the right hand of the pharaoh. After the vizier are the nobles and the priests, and this shows the importance in society. We're going to get more into religion later, but this is how Egyptian society is organized. Underneath the nobles and the priests are the scribes and the soldiers. Under them are the craftsmen, and under them are the farmers and the slaves. In our society, we have the working class on the bottom, the lower middle class on top of the working class. Above them are the upper middle class, and at the top is the upper class. In some societies, there is such thing as social mobility. But in other societies, there are caste systems where you just stay there your entire life. I did not have anything for right here as an example, but I will say one example is the caste system of India before the British rule. This brings us to politics. Politics are how the society and the government works and functions. And this involves various elite families and factions working together through diplomacy and other forms of interactions. For example, the Roman Republic and later the Roman Empire would have a Senate working with them, would have the army working with them, as in the leaders, and all these various factions work together. It is the same with the pharaohs of Egypt. The pharaohs would rule with the power of the priests backing them and would have to keep the various noble families happy. Medieval Europe is another example of politics. First off, the king at the top has various feudal lords he has to work with, and the various feudal lords have to work with him as a first among equals sort of thing. That is a gist on how the politics work. Check my videos on feudalism for more information, please. And also Persia. The kings of Persia rule as sort of a king of kings, an emperor, a first among kings. They rule with the belief it is their destiny to bring order, and it is their policy to show respect to the peoples who rule right under them, as per their Zoroastrian customs and civilizations. The next pillar of Spire is intellectual achievements. Now, intellectual achievements cover a wide range of topics: stories, architecture, other written works such as history, art, and another part is sculptures, science. Science shows intelligence, like the pyramids of Giza are an example. I mentioned the arts, like stories and history and art. The Epic of Gilgamesh is one example. Herodotus's history is another example. The Romance of the Three Kingdoms combines history and folklore and stories, showing a rather advanced civilization with people getting it together. And we have a more recent Tolkien. J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings trilogy is an example of an intellectual achievement. He wrote it with creating a mythology, a hypothetical mythology for England and the world, as a reminder of the England which the English people had lost. Another one is religion, and religion is the lifeblood of society. It is not the economy, it is not whatever other person says, it is religion. And the reason why is because it teaches a code of ethics. Virtually all religions inspire and have stories on their gods giving humanity a code of ethics, and from the code of ethics, laws are made. In addition, it provides a form of community that the gods answer questions and provides understanding about the various worlds they are in. And why do you die? Simple, you die, but there is an afterlife, so it gives people hope. which is needed in a dangerous world. I mentioned this before and I will say it again. Religion is the lifeblood of society, and the gods of the various nations are part of the civilizations who worship them. Like, for example, the Egyptian pantheon worship is exclusively to the Egyptians. They have a god of the sun because the sun of it is important to them. They have a god of foreigners as an enemy because, well, simply Egyptians had difficulty with foreigners. They have a goddess who watches after the birth of children because children are important to them. They have certain gods of the dead, and because of their notion of an afterlife. The Shinto Chinese religions, ancestral worship, hence why Japan and China have an area of worship, of having a high regard to their ancestors. Zoroastrianism, up until the Islamic conquest, the primary religion of Persia. It served as a reason why the Zoroastrian kings were expansionists. They were the chosen of the god of light fighting against the god of darkness. And Zoroastrianism provided a creed for human rights. Now we live on to Christianity, which is important for the western half of Europe and the eastern half of Europe, and it at one point had dominion over the middle parts of the Middle East and North Africa. Certain laws we have: thou shalt not kill, murder, comes from Judeo-Christian traditions. Mercy and justice, that comes from Christianity as well. Jesus the Christ talks about being a perfect judge, showing a combination of justice and mercy. Now we're on to trade routes. I mean, the economics and economy. And put it simply, trade routes. They are a sign of economics. And to foster trade, there are not just simple farms. There's complex things like supply and demand. And, for example, the Phoenicians of Carthage in northern Africa made purple dye. The Russians sparked the fur trade. And there was silk, the Silk Road from antiquity all the way to the Middle Ages. And these are some examples. Even during the Middle Ages, there were trade routes. Furthermore, banking and guilds emerged to protect and stimulate the economy during the Middle Ages. And there were elements of this throughout, well, Christendom. And from antiquity all the way to our age, silk and tea came from China, gold came from Egypt, and oil came from Saudi Arabia. Amber came from Lithuania, fur came from Russia. You need to have people to have confidence in states, which means laws to protect merchants and people from raiders, and there also needs to be markets. There needs to be people with enough money, spare cash to buy this stuff, and there needs to be also, I said, armies to secure power and authority over countries. But unlike the other pillars, this pillar is a product with how advanced a civilization is and how well a civilization can protect itself and its interests and its people. And sometimes they can interact. Like the Sadducees, we'll look at two examples. The Sadducees of the Jews during the antiquity in the Roman Empire. This has elements of culture to it. culture, economics. In culture is a combination of various parts put together. Like, for example, a solid political structure to enforce laws and protect trade. Society is stable with flowing through the classes. Division of labor in a market to afford things like nice cloth, fur, leather, gold, and silver, and precious stones. Also, there's weaving and other forms of ways to make clothing. And there's not just a market outside of the nation, but inside of the nation, and members inside of various nations will use economic, political stuff to require certain designs. Like the Sanhedrin of the early Jews, they had more elaborate headscarves to show their authority in the temple. The various patterns shown by the Tsar in this beauty contest shows Russian Byzantine symbols to represent Moscow as the third Rome. And these feed off of each other. Society creates a division of labor, but to prevent them from killing each other, they need to organize themselves into government. The politics come from the rulers protecting said society in exchange for obedience from said structure. These two together are important because they create elements of culture, which includes laws and customs, which also build up civilizations. I do not care what anyone else says. A custom is an unwritten law. Before a law was invented which says you cannot punch someone, guess what? If you punch someone, you're kind of a jerk and you're treated like one. And so that is a custom. And it comes in two forms, power and influence. Raw power is the coercive power of a state. Influence is a soft power, such as a religious authority, a group of people, or a cultural figure. However, I will warn you, do not underestimate both sources, because with enough influence, it can affect raw power. Now we get on to intellectual achievements. Intellectual achievements are inspired by religion. Intellectual achievements are inspired by religion and benefit society with their various achievements, from wonderful architecture, stories, and everything else. They also affect the politics of society. They praise the gods as well and honor them. They also help the economy as well. In return, politics protect intellectual achievements. Society also influences intellectual achievements. Now, religion is a key factor about it. It guides society, hence the various laws, and it also provides legitimacy for the various politics so society could honor, like the pharaoh or the king. The society honors religion, and the politics defend the religion, and in return, this religion gives the society and their leaders legitimacy. And in return, society respects said religion and politics defends the religion. Economics sustains the other institutions, like whether it sustains the society so people could still do their own things. Churches and temples need a form of economics to keep themselves going. And in return, the politics, the rulers of the government defend the economic interests of their subjects and everything else. All of these pillars are interconnected and build up the said civilization. If one of these pillars collapses or weakens, it is inevitable the civilization would simply collapse. Anyway, in conclusion, civilization is important. It is how our society functions, runs, so on and so forth. Every single civilization has unique ways on how it all works. It is all different to each other, and that is what makes the study of civilizations important and what makes the collapse of civilizations important. Because it could happen to our civilization right here. And if you are wondering why our civilization is not doing so good, well, take a look at this video. Maybe you will see something wrong about it. Anyway, this is the Crusader Historian. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Until next time, Deus Vult.